The sun was setting over Redstone, Arizona, casting long shadows across the dusty main street. Outside Murphy's general store, a terrified 8-year-old girl pressed herself against the chrome exhaust pipes of a parked Harley-Davidson. Her small hands trembling, her torn dress and scraped knees told a story no child should ever live. 3 men in expensive suits stood 20 feet away, scanning the street with cold eyes, searching for her. If you want to know how one stranger's decision changed everything, keep watching. The motorcycle belonged to Jacob Stone Morrison, a man whose weathered face carried the weight of promises made in darker times. He'd stopped in Redstone only to refuel, a town he'd avoided for 15 years. Ever since his best friend died, keeping a secret Stone still didn't understand. But as he stepped out of the store, he saw her. A child, folded into the shadow of his bike, eyes wide with terror, one finger pressed to her lips in a desperate plea for silence. Stone's instincts kicked in before his mind could catch up. He read the scene in seconds. The girl's defensive posture, the men's predatory stance, the way townspeople crossed to the other side rather than look. He knew corruption when he saw it. The girl's name was Emma Castellanos. She'd witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see, something that connected the town's mayor, a local judge, and the county sheriff to a network that moved more than just money through Redstone's quiet streets. For 3 days, she'd been running. For 3 days, they'd been hunting. Stone walked to his motorcycle with deliberate slowness, positioning himself between Emma and the hunters. The men noticed him now. A broad-shouldered stranger in worn leather, patches telling stories of brotherhood and roads that stretched beyond any map. "You see a little girl run past here?" The tallest man wore a deputy's badge. His voice carried the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Stone looked up slowly, his grey eyes flat. "Saw a lot of things today. But a little girl. Can't say I did." The deputy's jaw tightened. "We're looking for a runaway. She's disturbed, dangerous to herself." Stone stood slowly. "Funny. If my kid was missing, I'd be out here myself, not sending badges. And I'd probably change out of my courthouse clothes first." He gestured toward their polished shoes. "Not much worried parent energy coming off you." The tension crystallized. The deputy's hand moved to his weapon, but Stone's hand was already on his phone, held high. "Got a live stream running to my club's group chat. 67 brothers watching right now. Real interested in how this conversation ends." It was a bluff. His phone wasn't even unlocked, but the men didn't know that. "This isn't over," the deputy said quietly. "No," Stone agreed, his voice cold. "I don't expect it is." The men retreated to a black SUV, but they didn't leave. Stone knelt beside his bike. "Emma, right? I'm going to get you somewhere safe, but first, I need you to trust me." A tiny nod against chrome and leather, Stone pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. When the voice answered, Stone said only 3 words: "I need the crew." By dawn, 68 motorcycles would roll into Redstone. By sunset, the whole town would know that some promises survive everything. Even 15 years of silence, even death, even the corruption that had rotted this place from the inside out. Chapter 1. The Weight of Old Roads. Stone Morrison hadn't planned to stop in Redstone. The town existed only as a place to avoid, where his best friend had died 15 years ago. But his fuel gauge hit empty, and the desert stretched unforgiving in every direction. He pulled into Murphy's general store as the sun began its descent. Inside, Murphy stood behind the counter, older and grayer, but his eyes widened in recognition. "Thought you'd never come back," Murphy said quietly. "Didn't plan to," Stone replied, grabbing water. "Ran out of gas. Nothing happens by accident in this town." Murphy's voice dropped. "You showing up today? Maybe that's not coincidence." "Don't believe in fate." Tommy believed in fate. The name hung between them. Tommy believed you'd come back when it mattered. Tommy Chen, best friend, brother, dead 15 years from a bullet that should have been meant for someone else. A nervous woman entered, grabbed bread without looking, paid in exact change without speaking, and left quickly. "Town's scared," Murphy said. "Been scared for 3 years, ever since Mayor Hendricks took over, ever since they started recruiting." Recruiting for what? Questions like that get people hurt. That's why Tommy died. Stone felt old anger rising. Then maybe it's time someone started asking again. Murphy produced a sealed envelope from under the counter. "Tommy left this for you. Made me promise to give it if you ever came back." Stone's name was written in Tommy's precise handwriting. He took the envelope, but didn't open it. Not yet. "He knew," Murphy said quietly. "Tommy knew what was happening. He knew about the children. He was going to expose it all. That's why they killed him." "The girl," Stone said suddenly. "The one hiding outside. She's connected." Murphy nodded. "Emma Castellanos, 8 years old. She saw something she shouldn't have. Now they want to silence her." Stone's hand tightened on the envelope. 15 years ago, Tommy had died protecting a secret. Today, Stone would honor that death by protecting the truth. He walked outside where Emma waited and where 3 men had begun closing the distance. Stone positioned himself as a barrier, his presence a wall, his silence a challenge. The deputy stopped 10 feet away. "Sir, step aside. We're conducting official business." Stone's eyes swept over them, cataloging details. "Business looks a lot like hunting from where I'm standing. The child is a runaway, mentally unstable, making wild accusations. Where are these desperate parents? Why aren't they here?" The standoff intensified. Stone took a step forward. "Here's what I think. If Emma's parents were really worried, they'd be here. And I think you're following orders from someone who doesn't want their hands dirty." The second man spoke, voice cold. "You're interfering with a legal operation. We can arrest you." "You could try," Stone agreed. "But before you do, know that I've sent photos of all 3 of you to my club. Names, badge numbers, location. 67 brothers will know everything about you by the time you get me to a cell." It was a bluff, but these men had too much to hide. The threat of exposure made them hesitate. Stone held up his phone, angling it toward them. 68 brothers watching right now. Everyone a witness. You want her? You go through all of us. The standoff broke. They withdrew to the SUV, but remained watching. Stone knelt beside Emma. "I'm Stone. I know you're scared, but I'm going to get you somewhere safe. I promise." Emma's eyes focused on him. "You don't know what they'll do. They killed Mr. Martinez. They'll kill you too. Maybe, but I'm harder to kill than most." He showed her his phone, scrolling to a photo of 15 men beside motorcycles. "That's my family. When family calls, they come." Emma studied the photo, then pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "Tommy Chen was your friend. He left letters. That's what I found. That's what they want to destroy." Stone took the letter with shaking hands. After 15 years of questions, answers waited in a child's pocket. He dialed Marcus. "I need the crew, all of them, Redstone, Arizona, by dawn." "What kind of trouble?" Stone looked at Emma, at the SUV watching. "The kind that's been waiting 15 years to be finished. We'll be there before sunrise. 68 bikes, brother." Stone helped Emma onto his bike as he kicked the engine to life. He thought about Tommy and promises and how the past claimed the future. By dawn, everything would change. Chapter 2. Shadows and chrome stone rode toward the town's edge as darkness swallowed the desert. The black SUV maintained its distance behind them. He'd called the crew, but dawn was 8 hours away. 8 hours where Emma remained vulnerable. 5 miles outside town, Stone turned onto a dirt road leading to the old Chen property. Tommy's family had owned 40 acres here. After Tommy died, they'd sold and moved away. But the house still stood, weathered, but intact. Stone killed the engine and carried Emma inside. The house smelled of dust and abandonment, but it was shelter, it was defensible. He checked rooms, secured windows, catalogued exits. Military training died hard. In the kitchen, water still ran from the well. In Tommy's bedroom, photographs hung on the wall, two boys on motorcycles, arms around each other, promising the future would be kind. Stone returned to Emma and unfolded the letter she'd given him. "Stone, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Redstone isn't what it looks like. Mayor Hendricks, Judge Cartwright, Sheriff Voss, they're part of a network that moves children through this town. They recruit, they transport, they destroy anyone who notices. I documented everything. The evidence is hidden in Dad's workshop, behind the water heater. Everything you need to burn this network down. I know you'll do the right thing, even when it costs everything. Your brother Tommy Stone read it 3 times, hands shaking. 15 years, Tommy's evidence had waited while the network continued operating. He looked at Emma. "How did you find this?" "My mum cleans houses. I was exploring. I found the workshop, the hiding place, the lists." Her voice dropped. "Names, dates, children who disappeared. Mr. Martinez's name was there too. That's how I knew they killed him." "Who's Mr. Martinez?" My teacher. He asked questions about a missing student. They found him in the desert a week later. Sheriff said suicide." Emma's voice cracked. "But I saw the list." Stone moved to the workshop. Behind the water heater, he found a fireproof box. Inside, a laptop, USB drives, and Tommy's journal. Files containing names, dates, transactions, photographs, a web of corruption 15 years deep. At the center, Hendricks, Cartwright, and Voss. Stone copied everything, creating redundancies. He sent encrypted files to Marcus with instructions. If Stone didn't check in every 6 hours, release everything. He returned to Emma, who'd fallen asleep. He covered her with a blanket and positioned himself by the window to watch for threats. At 3:30, lights appeared, not from town, from the highway. Dozens of them. Marcus had said dawn, but he'd understood urgency. 68 motorcycles rolled down the dirt road in formation, parking in a perimeter around the house. Men dismounted. Brothers Stone had ridden with, fought beside, trusted. Marcus approached first, embracing Stone. "Brought everyone who could ride. When I said Tommy's name..." He looked toward the house. "She in there?" "Emma, 8 years old. They've been hunting her for 3 days." Marcus's expression hardened. "They'll have to go through 68 obstacles to get her. We've set up a perimeter." He paused. "We brought Tommy's research his parents gave us when they sold. Been waiting for the right moment to use it." As dawn colored the eastern sky, 68 men stood around the property. Somewhere in town, Hendricks, Cartwright, and Voss were waking to the knowledge their secret was about to become truth. Emma stirred, eyes opening. Stone knelt beside her. "You're safe now. I promised." She looked at the sea of leather and chrome outside. "They came. They really came." "Always," Stone said. "That's what family does." Chapter 3. The light between night and dawn. We're in Redstone, Arizona, where a girl's courage and a biker's promise are about to change everything. Stay with us. Dawn arrived like a slow burn across the desert. Stone stood on the porch with Marcus, while Emma slept inside. Around them, bikers positioned themselves strategically. Perimeter watch, communications equipment, supplies. These weren't weekend riders. These were veterans who understood tactics and holding ground. "Talk to the chaplain," Marcus said. "He's got FBI contacts who investigate trafficking. Says if we keep Emma safe for 48 hours, he can get federal agents here." "They won't give us 48 hours, Stone replied, watching the road. "They know their time is running out. Then we'll be ready. But Stone, this isn't just about Emma anymore. This is about exposing a network that's operated for decades. We don't just save one girl, we save everyone who comes after." Inside, Stone found Emma with Wilson, a former school counselor showing her photos of his grandchildren. "Mr. Wilson says his grandkids like science too," Emma said, voice still fragile but stronger. "Emma's been telling me about her teacher," Wilson explained. "Martinez. Sounds like he was a good man who noticed what others ignored." Emma's hands twisted together. "He asked about Lily, why she stopped coming to school. Nobody else asked. But Mr. Martinez kept asking, filed reports, called child services. Then they found him in the desert." Stone sat across from her. "Emma, tell me everything about finding Tommy's evidence. Everything you saw." She nodded. Lists, pages of lists, children's names, dates. Some had stars, some had X's. The X's were the ones who died. "Did you see Lily's name?" "Yes, with a star, from 3 months ago. The list said she was transported to Phoenix, gave an address. That's when I knew it was real." Stone felt pieces connecting, the machinery becoming visible. "There's more," Emma continued. "Photographs of Hendricks, Cartwright, Voss at a warehouse with children who looked scared. I took pictures with my mom's phone. But they found out, came to our house. My mom said I had to run, that she'd buy me time. I haven't heard from her since." The room went silent. Emma's mother had put herself between her child and the machine had swallowed her. "We'll find your mother," Stone said. "I swear it." Marcus appeared. "Movement. 4 vehicles from town. Sheriff's department. 12 men visible. Setting up a roadblock half a mile out." Stone moved to the window with binoculars. Thornton was there. Other uniforms. But also townspeople gathering at the edges, Murphy and others watching. "They've got an audience," Stone said. "Changes the game." A loudspeaker crackled. Sheriff Voss's voice carried across the desert. "This is Sheriff James Voss. You're harboring a fugitive. Release the child immediately or be arrested." Emma appeared beside Stone, gripping his jacket. "Don't let them take me. Please. I'd rather die here." An 8-year-old saying she'd rather die than go back. That was the reality of corruption. Stone raised a megaphone. "Sheriff, this is Stone Morrison. We have evidence of trafficking operations. Evidence compiled by Tommy Chen 15 years ago. Evidence implicating you, Hendricks, and Cartwright." Silence. Stone continued. "We've transmitted that evidence to federal authorities. FBI agents are en route. In 48 hours, this becomes federal. What you do next determines whether you face trafficking charges or trafficking plus murder. Choose carefully." Voss's voice returned, harder. "You're making accusations without proof. That child is disturbed. Release her for psychiatric evaluation." "The proof is in Tommy's files," Stone shot back. "The files you killed him to suppress. We're not releasing Emma. We're protecting her. If you want her, you go through all 68 of us. In front of all those witnesses, you've kept silent." He lowered the megaphone. "How long can we hold?" "Depends what they bring," Marcus said. "If it's just Sheriff's Department, indefinitely. If they call state police," he shrugged, "then we're making a statement, not winning." "Sometimes statements are enough," Wilson said. "Sometimes someone just needs to stand and say no more loudly enough that everyone remembers they can too." Stone looked at the crowd gathering, at Murphy and others who'd been too scared but were now watching, hoping someone else's courage might give permission for their own. "Then we hold," Stone said. "We hold until the FBI arrives or until they prove they're willing to massacre witnesses in front of a crowd. Either way, this ends today." Chapter 4. When the desert holds its breath. The standoff stretched through morning. Sheriff's vehicles remained at their roadblock, while 68 bikers held position around the Chen property. Neither side moved, but everyone understood this was temporary. Eventually, someone would force the issue. Stone used the time to organize Tommy's evidence with Emma's help. She remembered details from the photographs she'd taken, names she'd seen on lists, patterns she'd noticed because children notice things adults learn to ignore. There was a schedule, Emma explained, pointing at Tommy's journal. Every third Thursday, that's when they move people through town. Mr. Martinez figured it out because Lily disappeared on a Thursday, and so did the boy before her and the girl before him. Every third Thursday for how long? Stone asked. Years, maybe decades. The oldest date in Tommy's files was from 2003. 22 years. A trafficking network operating in plain sight for 22 years because they'd compromised the very people meant to investigate them. Stone felt sick. Marcus entered with news. FBI confirmed they're sending a team, ETA 6 hours. But Voss just got reinforcements. State police are arriving from the county seat. Looks like 20 additional officers. Stone did the math. 68 bikers against 30 plus law enforcement with legal authority. The optics were terrible. The outcome worse. We need to change the narrative, Wilson said. Right now, this looks like criminals resisting arrest. We need to show what it really is. Citizens protecting a witness from corrupt officials. How? Marcus asked. Emma spoke up, her young voice cutting through the tension. The townspeople. They know something's wrong. They've always known. They're just scared. But if we show them the evidence, if they see the truth... Stone knelt beside her. Emma, if we make this public, there's no going back. Your face will be everywhere. Your story will be everywhere. Are you ready for that? She met his eyes with a courage that shamed every adult who'd ever stayed silent. If it stops them from hurting more kids, then yes, I'm ready. Within an hour, they'd set up a makeshift press conference on the Chen property's front lawn. Marcus had contacted every news organization within driving distance. Stone had uploaded Tommy's files to a website that would go live the moment Emma started speaking. Wilson had printed photographs from the evidence. Nothing graphic, nothing that would traumatize, but enough to show the scope of what they'd uncovered. The townspeople came first, drawn by curiosity and whispers that something significant was happening. Then news vans arrived, cameras and reporters spilling out. The sheriff's roadblock held, but Voss couldn't stop information from flowing out. That wasn't how modern communication worked. Emma stood on the porch with Stone beside her, 68 bikers creating a wall of protection behind them. She held a microphone that seemed too large for her small hands, but her voice didn't waver. My name is Emma Castellanos. I'm 8 years old. 3 days ago I found evidence that proves Mayor Hendricks, Judge Cartwright and Sheriff Voss have been trafficking children through Redstone for 22 years. The words detonated like bombs. Cameras swung toward the sheriff's roadblock, capturing Voss's expression as he realized he'd lost control of the narrative. Reporters shouted questions. Townspeople gasped. Murphy stood at the front of the crowd with tears streaming down his face. Emma continued, her voice steady. My teacher, Mr. Martinez, tried to investigate when a student disappeared. They killed him and called it suicide. My mother tried to protect me when I found the evidence. I don't know if she's still alive. Tommy Chen tried to expose this network 15 years ago. They killed him too. But they didn't kill the truth. The truth survived in files he hid, in lists of names and dates and photographs, in evidence that proves exactly what they've done. Behind her, Stone activated the website. Tommy's entire investigation went live. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence Tommy had died protecting. Within minutes, it would be everywhere. Shared, downloaded, impossible to suppress. These men behind me aren't criminals, Emma said, gesturing to the bikers. They're heroes. They came when I had nowhere else to go. They protected me when the people who should have protected me were the ones hunting me. They stood between me and the machine that destroys children because they believe some things are worth fighting for. She paused, looking directly into the camera. My name is Emma Castellanos. I'm 8 years old, and I'm not going to be silent anymore. The press conference erupted into chaos. Reporters surged forward with questions. The sheriff's roadblock began to crumble as individual officers started questioning their orders. Several deputies simply walked away, unwilling to be associated with what was being exposed. Townspeople who'd stayed silent for years began telling their own stories. Children who'd disappeared, investigations that went nowhere, questions that led to threats. The narrative had shifted. Stone, Emma, and 68 bikers were no longer criminals resisting arrest. They were witnesses exposing corruption, and corruption, once exposed, lost its power. Sheriff Voss made one final attempt to salvage the situation. He approached with Thornton and 2 remaining deputies, his weapon drawn but pointing down. "This is still a lawful order. You need to disperse." Stone stepped forward, positioning himself between Voss and Emma. "Sheriff, there are 40 cameras pointed at you right now. Whatever you do next will be broadcast live. The FBI is 6 hours out. Federal investigators are already reviewing the evidence Emma just released. Your network is finished. The only question left is whether you want to add assaulting witnesses to your charges." For a long moment, Voss stood frozen, his career and his crimes playing across his face. Then his shoulders slumped, his weapon lowered, and something fundamental broke in his posture. He'd spent 22 years building power through fear. Fear evaporated when truth had witnesses. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Voss said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "We were just moving them through. We weren't supposed to be the monsters." "But you were," Emma said, her young voice carrying across the sudden silence. "You became monsters the moment you decided children were cargo instead of people." Voss's hands went to his head in a gesture of defeat so complete it was almost pitiful. Almost. Stone felt no pity for men who'd profited from destroying innocence. The FBI arrived 4 hours later to find the situation resolved. Hendricks, Cartwright and Voss were in custody, not of the bikers, but of state police who'd arrived after seeing Emma's press conference and realizing they'd been played. The network that had operated for 22 years was dismantled in a single afternoon, once the truth had oxygen to breathe. Emma's mother was found that evening, locked in a warehouse on Hendricks's property, beaten but alive, traumatized but breathing. She'd been held as insurance against Emma's silence, but silence had become impossible once Emma decided the truth mattered more than fear. Stone watched as Emma ran to her mother, watched as they collapsed into each other with the desperate relief of survivors who'd thought they'd never see each other again. Around them, townspeople were reclaiming their streets, their dignity, their right to live somewhere safe. It would take time, it would take therapy and trials and years of healing. But it would happen because someone had finally stood up and said no more. Marcus approached with a beer and a tired smile. Tommy would have been proud. Hell, Tommy is proud, wherever he is. He paid too high a price for this, Stone said quietly. Maybe. But his payment bought something important. It bought the moment when evil couldn't hide anymore, when corruption had to answer for itself. Marcus raised his beer. To Tommy, to promises kept, to the family we choose. Stone raised his own beer, looking at the 68 men who'd ridden through the night because brotherhood demanded it. To family. As the sun set over Redstone, for the second time since Emma had hidden behind his motorcycle, Stone realized that some journeys didn't end where you expected. He'd come here running from the past. He was leaving having finally made peace with it. Tommy's death hadn't been meaningless. The 15 years of silence hadn't been wasted. Everything had been waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right stand. Emma had been that person. A terrified 8-year-old who'd chosen courage when adults had chosen compliance. Stone had just been the instrument, the wall she'd hidden behind until she was ready to stop hiding. He'd keep the letter Tommy had written. He'd visit the Chen property every year on the anniversary. He'd make sure Emma's name became synonymous with bravery. instead of victimhood. But mostly, he'd remember that promises had power, even 15 years later, even through death, even when hope seemed impossible. Some debts survived everything, some promises outlasted time, some strangers became family the moment they refused to walk away. That was the story of how a girl hid behind a biker's motorcycle and changed an entire town. That was the story of how one man's refusal to look away dismantled 2 decades of corruption. That was the story of brotherhood, courage, and the truth that evil only wins when good people stay silent. Emma Castellanos had stopped being silent, and the world had listened. Chapter 5. The Long Road Home. 2 weeks after Emma's press conference, Stone sat in a courtroom watching as Mayor Hendricks, Judge Cartwright and Sheriff Voss faced arraignment on federal trafficking charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Tommy's documentation, combined with Emma's testimony and the digital records Marcus's tech-savvy brothers had extracted from the network servers, painted a picture so damning that even expensive lawyers couldn't spin it away. Emma sat between her mother and Stone, her small hand gripping his with surprising strength. She'd testified the day before, 4 hours of questions from attorneys who tried to be gentle but needed details that made everyone in the room want to weep. She'd held her ground with the same courage she'd shown on the Chen property's front lawn, refusing to let discomfort silence truth. The judge, a federal appointee from Phoenix, and carefully selected to have no connection to Redstone's compromised system, set bail at amounts that might as well have been infinity. Hendricks, Cartwright and Voss would await trial in federal custody. Their network was being dismantled piece by piece, each arrest leading to more evidence, more victims, more perpetrators who'd believed their positions protected them from consequences. "It's really over," Emma's mother whispered, her voice still carrying the rough edges of trauma, but also something new. Hope. They can't hurt anyone else. "Not in Redstone," Stone agreed. "But there are other towns, other networks, other people like Emma who need someone to stand between them and the machine." Emma looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much, but somehow still held light. "Then we find them. We help them. That's what family does, right?" Stone smiled despite the weight in his chest. An 8-year-old shouldn't have to think about saving others. An 8-year-old should think about homework and friends and what flavor ice cream was best. But trauma aged people in ways calendars couldn't measure, and Emma had earned wisdom the hard way. "Right," he said simply. "That's exactly what family does." After the arraignment, Stone walked with Marcus to where 68 motorcycles were parked outside the courthouse. The crew had stayed for the trial, turning Redstone into an impromptu biker convention. Local businesses had thrived. Murphy's store had sold more supplies in 2 weeks than in the previous year. The bikers spent money, tipped well, and made it clear they weren't leaving until justice was done. "FBI wants to talk to you," Marcus said, leaning against his Harley, "about Tommy's investigation, about forming some kind of witness protection network for kids in situations like Emma's. I'm not law enforcement. No, you're better. You're someone kids will trust, someone who'll stand between them and the monsters without needing a badge or a budget." Marcus pulled out a business card. "Special Agent Sarah Kenworth. She's been working trafficking cases for 15 years, says she wishes she'd had someone like you on every investigation." Stone took the card, studying it like it might contain answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. He'd spent years riding away from purpose, convinced that his time serving something larger than himself had ended when he left the military. But maybe purpose found you when you stopped running. Maybe Tommy had known that 15 years ago, and the letter, the evidence, the entire chain of events had been Tommy's way of calling Stone back to what mattered. "I'll think about it," Stone said. "You do that." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Meanwhile, we're riding to Phoenix tomorrow. Got a tip about a similar situation. Missing kids, compromised officials, people too scared to speak up. Thought you might want to come along. Stone looked back at the courthouse where Emma and her mother were emerging, surrounded by reporters and victim advocates and federal agents promising protection and support. Emma caught his eye and waved, her smile genuine despite everything. She'd been terrified when she hid behind his motorcycle. Now she was testifying in federal court and thinking about how to help other kids. That was the power of one person standing up. That was what happened when someone refused to accept that evil was inevitable. "Yeah," Stone said, returning Emma's wave. "I'll come along. Someone needs to make sure those kids have somewhere safe to hide when they get scared. Might as well be behind a motorcycle." Marcus grinned. "Tommy always said you'd figure it out eventually. Took you 15 years, but you got there. Better late than never." That's what he would have said too. They rode out of Redstone that evening, 68 motorcycles carrying men who'd learned that heroism wasn't about wearing badges or carrying guns. It was about showing up when someone needed you, about standing between vulnerable people and the machinery designed to crush them, about keeping promises even when, especially when, keeping them cost you everything. Stone had avoided Redstone for 15 years because the past hurt too much to face. He was leaving it now because the past had taught him something worth knowing, that silence was complicity, that indifference was evil's best friend, and that one person willing to say no more could topple systems that had stood for decades. Emma Castellanos had said no more at 8 years old. Stone Morrison had finally learned to say it at 46. Better late than never. Better to arrive when you were needed than to never arrive at all. The road stretched ahead, leading to Phoenix and to whatever situation Marcus had heard about, leading to more kids who needed help and more corruption that needed exposing, leading to the work Tommy had died trying to finish and that Stone would honor by continuing. Some debts survived death. Some promises outlasted time. Some strangers became family the moment they chose each other over the easy path of looking away. Stone had been a stranger once. Now he was family to 67 brothers and one 8-year-old girl who'd hidden behind his motorcycle and changed everything. Now he was part of something larger than himself, something Tommy had started and Emma had reignited. Something that would continue as long as there were people willing to stand between innocence and evil. He gunned the throttle, feeling the familiar rumble of his Harley, the wind against his face, the open road calling him toward whatever came next. Behind him, Redstone was healing. Ahead of him, Phoenix waited. In between, the desert stretched endless and beautiful, and full of possibility. This was the long road home, not to a place, to a purpose. And Stone intended to ride it as far as it led. Chapter 6. Phoenix Rising. If you're finding value in this story of courage and redemption, please hit that like button. It helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Phoenix blazed under afternoon sun as Stone and the crew rolled into the city's industrial district. Marcus had briefed them during the ride, a warehouse operation masquerading as a logistics company, children disappearing from homeless shelters, a pattern that looked disturbingly similar to what they'd uncovered in Redstone. The difference was that Phoenix had functioning law enforcement. Special Agent Kenworth had invited them specifically because she needed witnesses who couldn't be intimidated, people who'd stand their ground even when standing was dangerous. The bikers fit that description perfectly. They parked in a lot across from the suspected warehouse and waited. Stone had learned that investigation required patience more than action. You watched, you documented, you built cases that would hold up in court instead of collapsing under aggressive defense attorneys. Emma had wanted to come. Stone had said no, firmly but gently. She'd done her part. She'd been brave enough for a lifetime. Now it was time for adults to do the protecting while she got to be 8 years old again. Homework and ice cream and nights where the only thing she had to fear was nightmares that would fade with therapy and time. Movement. Wilson said quietly, lowering binoculars. 3 vans just pulled up. Back entrance. Looks like they're offloading. Stone raised his own binoculars, watching as men in maintenance uniforms opened van doors and gestured for people inside to exit. Not people, children, 12 of them, ranging from maybe 7 to 15, moving with the defeated posture of those who'd learned resistance was futile. His hands tightened on the binoculars. "Get Kenworth on the phone, now." Marcus was already dialing. "Agent Kenworth? We've got eyes on the target. They're moving kids right now." "Yes, ma'am, I understood." He lowered the phone. "FBI's 10 minutes out. SWAT's rolling with them. She says we observe only. Do not engage." Stone wanted to engage. Every instinct screamed to cross that street, kick in that door, put himself between those children and whatever waited inside that warehouse. But military training reasserted itself. You didn't win by charging blindly. You won by coordinating with allies, by overwhelming force, by making sure that when you struck, the enemy had no chance to regroup. 10 minutes stretched like hours. The children were led inside, the van drivers departed, and the warehouse returned to looking like any other industrial building. Unremarkable, forgettable, exactly the kind of place people learned not to see. Then the FBI arrived. No sirens, no drama, just professional precision as SWAT took positions. Agents moved to entry points, and the entire operation unfolded with the efficiency of people who'd done this many times before. Agent Kenworth approached Stone's position, her badge hanging from a chain around her neck. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with hard eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Morrison, thanks for the intel. We'll take it from here. The kids inside will be safe within the hour. We've got child services standing by, trauma counselors, everything they'll need." She paused. "What you did in Redstone, that was good work. Messy, but good. Here, we do it by the book. That way, convictions stick." Stone nodded slowly. "And the people running this operation?" "We've been building a case for 8 months. Your tip gave us probable cause for immediate action. Whatever we find inside will connect to a larger network. These things always do." Her radio crackled. "That's my cue. Stay here. Let us do our job." The raid happened fast. Breaching charges blew doors. SWAT poured inside. Shouts and commands echoed across the industrial lot. Within minutes, agents were bringing out suspects in handcuffs. 7 men, 2 women, all wearing expressions that mixed surprise with resignation. They'd thought they were untouchable. They'd learned otherwise. The children came out next, wrapped in blankets, despite the Phoenix heat. Their faces showing the kind of shock that came from sudden rescue, when you'd stopped believing rescue was possible. Counselors surrounded them immediately, creating a barrier of kindness between trauma and whatever came next. Stone watched from across the street, feeling the familiar mix of satisfaction and rage. Satisfaction that these particular children were safe. Rage that there were so many more still in danger, still waiting for someone to notice, still hoping that adults would finally do what adults were supposed to do. "That's 12 lives saved today," Marcus said quietly. "Thanks to Emma having the courage to speak up. Thanks to you having the courage to stand with her." 12 lives, Stone repeated. "How many more are still out there? Enough to keep us busy for a long time." Marcus gestured toward where Agent Kenworth was coordinating with her team. "But now we've got federal resources backing us. We've got a network of people who actually give a damn. We've got momentum." Over the next 3 hours, Stone and the crew gave statements to FBI agents, providing context about the Redstone network and how it might connect to Phoenix. The warehouse operation had been part of a larger trafficking route that moved through Arizona, Nevada, and California. Exactly the kind of regional network Tommy had suspected existed 15 years ago. "Your friend was right," Agent Kenworth said, reviewing Tommy's files on her laptop. "This has been operating for decades, probably longer. Each cell thinks they're independent, but they're all connected through financial transactions and shared infrastructure. Taking down Redstone sent shockwaves through the entire network. They're panicking, making mistakes. That's when we catch them. "So what happens now?" Stone asked. "Now? We roll up the network one cell at a time. We offer deals to people willing to testify. We build cases that put the leadership away for life." She looked up from her screen. "And we protect witnesses, kids like Emma who've seen things they shouldn't have. That's where you come in." Stone raised an eyebrow. "How?" Kenworth pulled out a folder. "FBI wants to create a program. Civilian protection teams for high-risk witnesses, especially children. People who can provide security while we build cases. People who aren't law enforcement, but who understand how to stand between threats and vulnerable people." She slid the folder across the table. "People exactly like you and your crew." Stone opened the folder, scanning documents that outlined the program's structure, compensation, legal authorities, and responsibilities. It was official. It was funded. It was the FBI essentially asking 68 bikers to become professional protectors for children who'd witnessed crimes. "You're serious," he said. "Deadly serious. We lose too many witnesses to intimidation. Too many kids recant because they're terrified or because their families are threatened. But if we can provide protection from people who can't be bought and won't be intimidated." She gestured toward where the crew was gathered. "You've already proven you're willing to stand between kids and evil. We're just asking you to do it with federal backing." Marcus leaned over Stone's shoulder, reading the documents. "This is real. This is actually happening." "If you're willing," Kenworth said, "there's paperwork, background checks, training on legal boundaries, but at the end of it, you'd be doing officially what you've already been doing unofficially, and you'd be saving lives while doing it." Stone thought about Tommy, about promises kept and promises still being fulfilled, about Emma, hiding behind his motorcycle, and how that single moment had set everything in motion, about the 12 children being loaded into vans right now, not to be trafficked, but to be taken somewhere safe, somewhere they could start healing. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're willing." Kenworth smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "Then welcome to the team, Mr. Morrison. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." As the sun set over Phoenix, turning the desert sky shades of orange and purple, Stone called Emma. Her mother answered first, protective and cautious, then handed the phone to her daughter. "How did it go?" Emma asked immediately. "Did you save them?" 12 kids, Emma. Safe now because you were brave enough to speak up in Redstone." Nay, a pause on the other end. When Emma spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. 12? 12. And we're going to save more. The FBI's creating a program. We're going to protect kids like you, kids who've seen things and need someone to stand with them while they testify. Like a family. Exactly like a family. The kind you choose, the kind that doesn't abandon their own. Another pause. "Tommy would be proud, your friend. He'd be proud that his evidence is still saving people." Stone's throat tightened. "Yeah, I think he would be." "I'm proud of you too, Stone. You're a hero." "I'm just a guy on a motorcycle who decided to stop when a scared kid needed help. That's what heroes do. They stop when other people keep going." They talked for a few more minutes. About school starting soon, about the counseling sessions helping, about nightmares fading slowly but fading nonetheless. When Emma finally hung up, Stone stood for a long moment staring at his phone. Marcus approached with 2 beers. "To Tommy?" "To Tommy," Stone agreed, raising his bottle. "And to Emma. And to every kid we'll protect going forward." "Nah, that's a lot of kids." "Then we'd better get started." They drank as stars emerged above Phoenix, as the day's heat finally broke, as the city transformed into its nighttime self. Somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, 12 children were sleeping in safe beds for the first time in weeks or months or years. Somewhere in Redstone, Emma was healing with the knowledge that her courage had mattered. Somewhere in whatever came after death, Tommy was watching and maybe finally resting. The road ahead would be long. There would be more raids, more witnesses, more stands against evil that wore different faces but always had the same rotten heart. But Stone had 67 brothers willing to ride it with him. He had federal backing and legal authority. He had purpose. Most importantly, he had the memory of a girl who'd hidden behind his motorcycle and changed everything. That memory would carry him through whatever came next. That memory would remind him why the work mattered even when it was dangerous, exhausting, or seemingly impossible. Some strangers became family. Some promises survived everything. Some single moments of courage rippled outward until they changed the world. Emma Castellanos had hidden behind a motorcycle. Stone Morrison had stopped running from his past. Together, they'd started something that would save lives for years to come. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Chapter 7. The Promise Keeper. 3 months after Phoenix, Stone sat in a safe house outside Tucson with a 13-year-old boy named Carlos, who'd witnessed his foster parents selling children to a trafficking network. Carlos wasn't hiding behind motorcycles. He was hiding behind walls that the FBI had built specifically to keep witnesses alive long enough to testify. But walls didn't understand fear the way people who'd lived through it understood fear. Walls couldn't promise that everything would be okay. Walls couldn't show you photographs of other survivors who'd made it through and come out stronger. Stone could. "This is Emma," he said, showing Carlos a photo on his phone. 3 months ago, she was where you are now, scared, alone, convinced that speaking up would just get her killed faster. Carlos studied the photo. Emma, grinning outside Murphy's General Store, holding an ice cream cone, looking exactly like an 8-year-old should look. She doesn't look scared. She's not anymore. Took time. Took therapy. Took learning that the people protecting her actually meant it when they said they wouldn't let anything happen to her. Stone scrolled to another photo. This is her testifying in federal court. 14 hours over 3 days. Toughest thing she'd ever done. But she did it because she knew it mattered. Did they convict them, the people who hurt her? All of them. Life sentences. No parole. Stone met Carlos's eyes. Your testimony will do the same thing. The people who used you, who sold other kids, they'll go away forever, but only if you're brave enough to speak. Carlos's hands were shaking. He was trying to hide it, but Stone had seen too many traumatized kids to miss the signs. What if they find me? What if they get to my real mom? They said they would if I talked. They said that because fear was the only weapon they had left. They've already lost. The FBI has them in custody. Their network is dismantled. The only thing standing between justice and them walking free is your testimony. Stone leaned forward. I know you're scared. You should be scared. What they did to you was terrifying. But here's what I need you to understand. You're not alone. You've got 68 bikers who'll put themselves between you and any threat. You've got federal agents who've dedicated their careers to protecting kids like you. You've got Emma and 12 kids from Phoenix and 47 other witnesses who've all stood up and said no more. That's a lot of people. That's a family, and families protect their own. The trial took 5 days. Carlos testified for 7 hours total, detailing everything he'd witnessed over 2 years in a foster home that had been a front for trafficking operations. His foster parents sat in the defendant's box, their expensive lawyers trying to paint Carlos as confused or vindictive or mentally unstable. But Carlos held firm. When defense attorneys tried to shake his testimony, he responded with the kind of calm clarity that only came from knowing you were telling the truth. When the prosecutor asked if he was afraid, Carlos said yes. But that being afraid didn't mean the truth changed. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who'd spent 30 years on the bench and had seen every variety of human cruelty, sentenced Carlos's foster parents to consecutive life sentences. As they were led away in handcuffs, Carlos turned to Stone with tears streaming down his face. "I did it. I actually did it." "You did," Stone confirmed, wrapping an arm around the boy's shaking shoulders. "You were brave when it mattered most. That's all anyone can ask." Outside the courthouse, Agent Kenworth briefed the press, while Wilson coordinated with social services to place Carlos somewhere safe. Stone watched as more survivors arrived. Emma with her mother, 3 teenagers from Phoenix, families who'd lost children and finally had justice. They'd formed a support network, these survivors, meeting monthly, sharing stories, reminding each other that speaking up had mattered. Emma had started it, suggesting that witnesses needed each other the way Stone's crew needed their brotherhood. "We're calling it the chain," Emma explained to Carlos, "because we're all connected. Each person who testifies makes it easier for the next person. Each victory makes the next one more possible." Stone watched as Emma, still only 8 but carrying wisdom beyond her years, explained to Carlos how to handle nightmares, how to trust again, how to remember that what happened to him didn't define him. She'd become what she'd needed 3 months ago, proof that survival was possible. Over the next 6 weeks, Stone and the crew protected 9 more witnesses. A 15-year-old in Albuquerque who'd escaped a trafficking ring, twin brothers in Las Vegas who documented their abusers, a 10-year-old girl in San Diego whose testimony brought down a network spanning 3 states. Each case followed the same pattern: fear, protection, testimony, justice. The crew became experts at creating safe spaces, at standing between threats and vulnerable children, at showing up when it mattered most. "We've dismantled 14 networks in 3 months, Kenworth told Stone during a planning meeting. Arrested over 200 perpetrators, saved an estimated 300 children. That's because of your crew, because you were willing to stand when others walked away." "It's what Tommy would have wanted," Stone replied, "what he died trying to accomplish." "Then let's make sure his death keeps meaning something." She pushed forward a file. "Seattle, larger network, more dangerous. We need your best people." Stone studied the file. A trafficking operation embedded in tech companies, using corporate infrastructure to move children internationally. Sophisticated, well-funded, extremely dangerous for witnesses. "We'll be there," he said simply. That night, Stone called Emma. Their weekly calls had become routine. His way of checking on her progress. Her way of making sure he wasn't carrying too much weight alone. "How many this week?" she asked immediately. 3 witnesses protected, 2 trials won, 1 network dismantled. "That's good. That's really good." A pause. "Are you sleeping?" Stone smiled despite exhaustion. "Some. You have to sleep, Stone. You can't save everyone if you're too tired to function." "When did you become the wise one in this relationship?" "I learned from the best." Her voice softened. "I'm going back to school next week. Real school, not homeschool. Mum says I'm ready." "Are you ready?" "I think so. I'm still scared sometimes, but Dr. Martinez says fear doesn't mean I'm broken. It means I'm healing and remembering to be careful. Dr. Martinez is right." Stone leaned back in his chair. "Emma, I'm proud of you. You know that, right? What you did, what you're still doing, being brave enough to heal, to help others, that's heroism, the real kind. I had help. I had you and Marcus and Wilson and 65 other bikers who showed me what family looks like." A beat of silence. "Tommy would be proud too. Of both of us. Yeah, I think he would be." They talked for another 20 minutes about normal things. Homework anxiety, favorite teachers, whether chocolate ice cream was objectively better than vanilla. The conversation Stone had wanted for Emma 3 months ago. Ordinary worries, childhood concerns, the luxury of thinking about small things because the big things were finally handled. When they hung up, Stone sat in the quiet of the safe house, thinking about chains and families and how courage spread from one person to another like light driving back darkness. Emma had been terrified, hiding behind his motorcycle. Now she was helping other kids find their own courage. Tommy had left evidence that saved lives 15 years after his death. Stone was protecting witnesses who'd save even more lives through their testimony. The chain extended backward and forward, connecting past sacrifices to future justice. Some debts survived everything. Some promises outlasted time. Some single acts of courage, hiding behind a motorcycle, standing your ground, refusing to be silent, changed everything. Stone had stopped running from his past. Now he was running toward his future, protecting witnesses, dismantling networks, honoring Tommy's memory by finishing the work his friend had started. The road ahead was long. Seattle waited. After Seattle would come other cities, other networks, other children who needed someone to stand between them and evil. But Stone had 67 brothers willing to ride that road with him. He had Emma's courage reminding him why it mattered. He had Tommy's memory pushing him forward. That was enough. That would always be enough. Chapter 8. Full circle. 6 months after Redstone, Stone returned to the Chen property with Emma, her mother, and the entire crew. The FBI had officially closed the investigation, convicting 47 people connected to the trafficking network. Redstone was healing, building new institutions, learning to trust again. Murphy had organized a memorial for Tommy, a permanent marker on the property where Tommy had grown up, where he'd hidden evidence that eventually brought justice. The whole town came. People who'd been too scared to speak now shared stories of how Tommy had tried to help them, how he'd noticed things others ignored. "He saw me," one elderly woman said through tears. "My granddaughter disappeared in 2008. Tommy was the only one who believed me when I said something was wrong. He investigated even when the sheriff told him to stop. He cared when caring was dangerous. Story after story. Tommy caring, Tommy noticing, Tommy documenting, Tommy dying because he'd refused to look away." Emma stood beside Stone as they unveiled the memorial, a simple stone marker with Tommy's name, dates, and a single line. He stood for those who couldn't stand for themselves. "That's what you do now," Emma said quietly. "What all of you do, standing for people who can't." Stone nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. Around the memorial, 68 bikers stood in formation, a wall of leather and chrome and quiet strength. They'd come from across the country for this moment, honoring the man whose death had started everything, whose evidence had saved hundreds. Agent Kenworth approached with news. "The Seattle network is dismantled. 8 witnesses testified, 43 arrests, international warrants issued for the leadership." She paused. "Your crew's protection was perfect. Not a single witness compromised, not a single threat that reached them." "That's the job," Stone replied. "It's more than a job now. It's a movement." She gestured toward the crowd. 12 other motorcycle clubs have contacted the FBI asking about the protection program. They want to do what you're doing, want to use their numbers and their courage to shield witnesses. Marcus grinned. "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery." "It's more than flattery. It's multiplication. If we can train other crews, establish protection networks across the country." Kenworth's expression shifted to something like hope. "We could change how witness protection works, make it accessible to people who normally couldn't afford it." Stone looked at Emma, at her mother, at the townspeople gathered to honor Tommy. He thought about Carlos in Tucson, about the 12 kids from Phoenix, About the 300 children who'd been saved because one 8-year-old had hidden behind a motorcycle and one biker had refused to walk away. "Then let's train them," he said. "Let's build something that lasts longer than any of us. Something Tommy would recognize, something that makes sure no child ever has to face evil alone." The memorial service concluded with Wilson, their crew's unofficial chaplain, leading a prayer for Tommy, for all the victims who hadn't survived, for the survivors learning to live again. Then Emma stepped forward with a letter she'd written. "Dear Tommy," she read, her young voice carrying across the desert evening. "I never met you, but you saved my life. The evidence you hid kept me alive when people wanted me dead. The courage you showed taught Stone to be brave. The promise you made 15 years ago is still protecting children today." She paused, wiping tears. "I'm 8 years old, but I understand that some people live longer than their lifetimes, that what they do echoes forward until it touches people they'll never meet. You did that. You're still doing that. Every child we save, every network we dismantle, every witness we protect, that's you, still fighting, still refusing to give up." Her mother joined her, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Thank you, Tommy Chen. Thank you for being brave when it cost you everything. Thank you for leaving behind the truth, even when you knew you wouldn't live to see justice. Thank you for teaching my daughter that one person standing up can change the world." The crowd was silent, except for quiet crying. Stone felt Marcus's hand on his shoulder, felt the weight of 67 brothers surrounding him, felt the presence of something larger than any individual, a movement built on Tommy's sacrifice and Emma's courage. As stars emerged above the desert, the crew shared stories around a bonfire. Emma sat between Stone and Wilson, listening as hardened bikers talked about the witnesses they'd protected, the trials they'd supported, the small victories that added up to something significant. "Phoenix trial concluded yesterday," one biker reported. "All 12 kids we rescued are in permanent safe placements. 3 chose foster families. 9 reunited with relatives, all getting therapy and education support. Albuquerque network leader got 40 years, another added. The 15-year-old who testified started an advocacy group. She's speaking at schools now, teaching kids to recognize trafficking warning signs. Story after story, children saved, networks destroyed, justice delivered. All because Emma had hidden behind a motorcycle and Stone had stopped to help." "It's not just us anymore," Marcus said, looking around the fire. "It's 100 bikers across 10 states. It's FBI agents who finally have protection resources that work. It's survivors helping survivors. It's whole communities learning that silence enables evil and speaking up dismantles it." Emma leaned against Stone's shoulder, exhausted but content. Tommy started something that couldn't be stopped. Even death didn't stop it. "No," Stone agreed quietly. "Some things are bigger than death. Some promises outlast everything." Later, after Emma and her mother had gone to bed in Murphy's guest rooms, after most of the crew had retired to tents scattered across the property, Stone stood alone at Tommy's memorial. The stone was cool under his hand, the inscription barely visible in starlight. "We did it, brother," Stone whispered. "We finished what you started. Protected the kids you died trying to save. Built something that'll keep protecting them long after we're gone." The desert wind carried his words away, but Stone felt something settle in his chest, the weight he'd carried for 15 years, finally lifting. Tommy's death hadn't been meaningless. The silence hadn't been wasted. Everything had been waiting for the right moment. Emma had been that moment, a terrified child who'd chosen courage, a witness who'd refused to be silenced, a survivor who'd become an advocate. And Stone had been the wall she'd hidden behind until she was ready to stand on her own. That was enough. That was everything. Chapter 9. The road goes on. 1 year after Emma hid behind Stone's motorcycle, The witness protection program had expanded to 17 states with over 200 trained protectors. Stone stood in a FBI conference room in Washington, D.C., presenting to policymakers about the program's success. 397 witnesses protected, he reported, showing statistics that translated lives saved into bureaucratic language. 86 networks dismantled, over 700 arrests, estimated 2,000 children prevented from entering trafficking pipelines. The numbers were impressive, but they didn't capture what mattered. Carlos graduating 8th grade with honors, Emma starting a blog for young survivors, the Phoenix 12 forming a band and playing at anti-trafficking fundraisers, lives rebuilt, futures reclaimed, hope restored. Agent Kenworth took over, detailing legislative proposals to formalize and fund the program permanently. Bipartisan support was building. Politicians loved programs that saved children and cost less than traditional witness protection. After the presentation, Stone escaped to the building's roof, needing air and space. Marcus found him there minutes later. "You did good in there," Marcus said. "Tommy would have been proud. Emma too." "Feels weird, translating what we do into PowerPoint presentations. That's how you make it last, how you turn a movement into an institution." Marcus leaned against the railing. "Kenworth says the legislation will pass. The program becomes permanent. We'll have federal funding, legal protections, expansion into trafficking prevention and survivor support." Stone watched traffic crawl through D.C. streets far below. "And if it becomes an institution, does it stop being what made it work? The personal connection, the family aspect? Not if we don't let it. Institutions are just people organized, as long as the right people stay involved." Marcus trailed off, then changed direction. "Emma called this morning, wanted to know if you'd speak at her school's career day." "Career day? I'm not sure professional biker is what they're looking for." "She wants you to talk about standing up for people who can't stand for themselves, about how one person deciding to help can change everything." Marcus smiled. "About being a hero." "I'm not a hero, I'm just a guy who stopped when everyone else kept driving." "Yeah, Emma says that too. Says that's exactly what heroes are." 3 months later, Stone stood in Emma's school gymnasium, facing 200 students. Emma sat in the front row, grinning encouragement. Her mother stood nearby with other parents who'd heard about the man who'd saved their town. "I'm not good at speeches," Stone began. "I'm better at riding motorcycles and standing between threats and people who need protection. But Emma asked me to come. And when Emma asks for something, you show up. That's what family does." He told them about Tommy, about promises that survived death, about evidence hidden for 15 years waiting for the right person to find it, about an 8-year-old who'd been brave enough to hide behind a motorcycle and a biker who'd been tired enough of running to finally stop. "Heroes aren't people who aren't afraid," Stone said. "Heroes are people who do the right thing even when they're terrified. Emma was terrified when she found evidence of trafficking. She hid behind my motorcycle because she thought the people hunting her were unstoppable. But she stopped running. She started speaking, and her courage inspired others to be brave too." He gestured toward Emma. "This girl changed an entire town, brought down a network that had operated for 22 years, saved hundreds of children who came after her, and she did it by refusing to stay silent when silence was easier." The students were riveted. Stone continued. "My friend Tommy died 15 years ago trying to expose corruption. I spent those 15 years running from the pain of losing him. But Emma showed me that Tommy's death hadn't been meaningless if we finished what he started, that promises could outlast time if people honored them." He looked directly at Emma. "You don't need motorcycles or leather jackets to be a hero. You just need the courage to do what's right when it matters, to speak up when others stay silent, to stand up when others walk away. Emma did that at 8 years old. If she can be that brave, then anyone can. The applause was deafening. Students rushed forward with questions about trafficking warning signs, about how to report suspicions, about what they could do to help. Emma stood beside Stone, answering questions with the confidence of someone who'd survived the worst and come through stronger. Later, driving back to Arizona with the crew, Stone received a text from Emma. "Thank you for stopping. Thank you for standing. Thank you for showing me that family is who shows up when you need them. Love, Emma." Marcus read over his shoulder. "That girl's got your number. You're going soft, Stone." Maybe, or maybe I'm finally understanding what Tommy knew 15 years ago, that the work is the legacy, that standing for people who can't stand for themselves is the only thing that really matters. Deep thoughts from a guy who fixes everything with a wrench and stubbornness. Stone smiled. Tommy would have approved. Yeah, he would have. The road stretched ahead, endless and beautiful. Stone had spent years riding away from purpose. Now he rode toward it, protecting witnesses, training other crews, building something that would outlast everyone involved. Emma had hidden behind his motorcycle one terrified evening. She'd changed his life, honored Tommy's memory, and started a movement that saved hundreds. Some strangers became family, some promises survived death, some single moments of courage rippled outward until they transformed the world. That was the story of how a girl hid behind a biker's motorcycle, and what happened next shocked a whole town, and then a whole state, and eventually a whole country of people who learned that silence enabled evil and courage dismantled it. The motorcycle rumbled beneath Stone, steady and reliable. The crew rode beside him, brothers in the work that mattered. Ahead, more witnesses waited for protection, more networks needed dismantling, more children needed someone to stand between them and the machinery designed to destroy innocence. Stone would be there. They all would, because that's what family did. That's what promises meant. That's what Tommy had died believing and Emma had lived proving. The road went on. So would they. Thank you for watching this story of courage, loyalty, and the power of one person standing up. If you found hope in Emma's journey and Stone's dedication, please subscribe to see more stories that remind us what real heroism looks like. Until next time, remember, you never know when stopping to help someone might change everything.